Okay, good evening, people. How are you doing? 8 o'clock, well, 8:01. Apologies for that. And welcome to the Sports Therapy Association podcast. We're having a few technical problems, I'm afraid, at the moment with Balens. We're hoping we're going to be able to sort them out. Somebody is on the case as we speak. Hopefully we sort it out in 5 minutes or so. But in the meantime, you have tuned in to episode 47 of the Sports Therapy Association podcast. It's been booked as an insurance special. But before we get into that, let's just say thank you to last week's guests. All of our episodes are obviously on YouTube if you want to watch the video. And you can also download them as a podcast. If you do listen to the podcast and you enjoy it, then one, please subscribe. And two, if you'd be so kind as to leave a rating and a review, that'd be great as well. So last week, it was a lovely chat, some really good feedback, really inspiring, as all our guests indeed are. We had the pleasure of the company of master's students, Kieran Wall and Sam Hellard from Cardiff University, who were doing in the first year Masters of Sports and Exercise Science, the biomechanics pathway at Cardiff Metropolitan University, where amongst other tutors they're doing research at the moment under the tuition of the great Izzy Moore. And it was a lovely episode, just a chance of listening to their journey, made me feel very old. And everyone in the audience going, what a lovely bunch of boys, what lovely lads, how polite. So it cleared up our distorted, grumpy old man image of kind of 20-year-olds. It was great. They're very presentable. If you want to check that out, I definitely would recommend it. Go to the podcast, download it, and you can listen all about their experiences and why they chose the path where they are, what surprised them, whether it was easy for them to get into university, and a lot of other tips as well. So that's all waiting for you, available video on YouTube, on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel, or if you prefer the podcast, you can just download it from your favorite podcast player. Also, while we're thanking people, then the week before, we had the pleasure of 3 STA members and regional reps, and and Gary himself is going to be on a minute tonight. And we did a COVID-19 roadmap special where we talked with Scottish regional rep Daniel Gerber. Thank you very much, Daniel. I'm not sure he's in the house yet tonight. That was really interesting, looking at your perspective. And also Gráinne Walsh, Northern Ireland, representing Northern Ireland, and Gareth Thomas Davis, representing Wales. And we looked at where we are at the moment, okay, as the COVID-19 restrictions start easing off. We compared the different regions, and it was really nice kind of bonding UK kind of look at where we move from here as individual therapists and indeed as an industry. And don't forget as well, just to mention for part 1 and part 2 of the Shockwave Therapy episodes, which are still being talked about, a whole load of great information on there. Still some very interesting debates going on, not too polarized, I'm pleased to say. About Shockwave Therapy. I'm happy to say most of the discussions I've seen still going on about them does it suit you as a therapist? Is it something you should entertain having in your clinic rather than, oh, it's great or it's rubbish, it doesn't work. So that's really healthy. I'm glad that came out of it. I sit on one side of the fence, but I'm more open to the idea now for the right therapist with the right kind of investment and seeing the right athletes, particularly tendinopathies, then it may well be something to invest in. Be interesting if I was still in a clinic of 10, whether we would go for it. But as I'm solo now, I know what I'm seeing. And indeed, if you're looking for training of that, then do check out Mike Grice and Uwe Indegard, who are both fantastic educators, really good evidence-based educators as well, let's face it, because at the end of the day, all these adjuncts, as it were, it depends who presents them, who teaches them to you. It's all about the interpretation of the results, isn't it, at the end of the day, like anything. So I would definitely encourage you to check out those two. So yes, tonight advertised, you would have seen, we are hoping that David Balens will still be able to join us, but there were technical difficulties. So don't worry if you're still filling up here. If you're listening to the recording, then do stick with us. I can't guarantee what it's going to be about for the next hour. But if you're with us live as well, I'm just going to say hello to a few people here. So Mark Nussi, always first through the door, as always. Good to see you here, Mark. Catherine as well. The regulars are here. It's like a long bar, isn't it? Lining up the shots. Brian's here. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Caroline McKendrick. If you ever want to come along to the Sports Therapy Association Facebook recording, then you're welcome. You don't have to be a member. It's a lovely chance to get to know what the STA is all about and the kind of people who are in here, and a real friendly bunch. And it's kind of thanks to COVID, really, which sounds a bit weird, but there's definitely been some fantastic, I'd like to say, friendships kind of developed on professional levels as well. Lots of people talking to each other, not just sports therapists as well. We're crossing the traditional walls and barriers here. Becky Carroll, Marta, how you doing? Emma Victoria, Wardle, how are you? Louise Aker with no R, fantastic. It's been a while, hasn't it? I'm glad. Nice to see you. Notice I got your name right straight away. Been practicing that. And Caroline, don't worry if you are late. You haven't missed anything that serious yet. It's just me warbling on. So what we'll do is, while I'm waiting to see if we can get David on the show, then we'll bring up Gary Benson, founder of the Sports Therapy Association, and have a little chat about where things are. I know he's been a busy man. And if you've got any questions for myself or Gary, or anything indeed you'd like to talk about, because it might turn into a Q&A. So anything you guys in here fancy talking about, then feel free. So I'm going to put that Balens there on hold for a second. Let's get rid of that, and let's replace it with the far more impressive figure of Mr. Gary Benson. Hey Gary, how you doing?
Evening, Matt. Yeah, for a change, it's not me at the centre of the technology.
No, yeah, we're working on it, but we'll have to see. We'll see how it goes. If it doesn't happen tonight, then don't worry, it will happen another night, people. If you're listening to the recording, we apologies if you've well, no, if you listen to the recording, then I haven't ruined your life at all, have I? All you're doing is sitting down in your own time. So no, the people who are live, I should be apologising to if you're taking time out to actually join us. But anyway, how are you, Gary? What's new?
Yeah, very well, thank you. What's new is our Scottish members have had an announcement from the First Minister today. I'm still going through it. Hi, Brian. So yeah, they're going to go back to work next week. Yeah, stay safe up there in Scotland, everybody. The guidance will, I suppose, be the same as it is in England. As I say, I've got to go through the finer detail. I hadn't prepared for tonight because I've got a list of questions about insurance here. So yeah, I mean, if any members are out there and they want to, just have a chat, if they want to come on board tonight and have a chat, where do they want us to go with this? In the coming weeks and months, is there anything they're interested in? I've had a couple of conversations with people who, from a graduate background, sports therapists who want to know a little bit more about, want to have a discussion about, opportunities for graduates, because the sports therapy is, it's not a new industry. If you compare it to physiotherapy, for example, it is a new industry, but, in 30 years that the sports therapy industry has been here, how have employment opportunities changed? I mean, we fight discrimination on a daily basis where, the restrictive employment policies saying you have to be a member of this, that, or the other, which we don't agree with. So we're fighting that. But, what do the graduates do out there? Because, we've had a lot of focus recently on the chats about, soft tissue therapy, the future of soft tissue therapy. We've had some great people from across the world. Walt Fritz talking about his journey in soft tissue therapy. Then we had Jamie Johnson from British Columbia talking about his and how he's moving towards, or how the industry is moving towards, an evidence-informed industry. But I've been reading some of the Facebook groups over this past week about, everybody's shooting down massage and soft tissue therapy. And it has a value, it has a place. It might not be for the reasons that we thought when we were trained. We were told, about breaking down scar tissue and stretching muscle fibers, etc. But the therapeutic touch has a place, and I'm sure. So I'd like to hear from graduate sports therapists who'd like to come on and probably extol the virtues of their individual practices. What do they do differently? Is it mainly soft tissue based? Is it exercise rehab based? Do people work primarily in pitch side? So let's get a sort of a general picture of where our members are working. It would be really good to have some members who are willing to come on board and just have a chat about it, really.
Definitely. I mean, this whole thing was started with the idea of you guys sending in the subjects, and it is happening in the background. So a couple of you, after we chatted with Mike Stewart from No Pain, KNOW pain.co.uk. A couple of you actually mentioned that you wanted to see if we could get Rachel Zoffness, pain psychologist, on the show. I'm happy to say that she's going to be coming along on May the 18th. Talking live from San Francisco, and she's got her pain management book, which is on Amazon. So yeah, had a lovely chat with her. Lovely lady, as I imagined. I've read her book, and yeah, she's going to be doing a pain episode on May the 18th. We've also got Gerard Green, who was requested when we had the last time we had the male pelvic health episode. So he's going to be coming along May the 11th. And next week, I've still got to confirm it 100%, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have a really interesting talk about sacroiliac joint pain with Mark Laslett, who's a specialist musculoskeletal physiotherapist from New Zealand, who's published papers on the topic, just about evidence, bringing up to date kind of the evidence-based practice with regards to sacroiliac joint dysfunction and the tests we use, and whether there is a dysfunction, is such a thing, and that sort of stuff. So we've got a load of stuff booked in, but I only book stuff in if I haven't got messages from you guys. So I can see now, actually, Caroline has said, let's have a look. I would love to know how we can help to regulate the sports massage training to bring all courses in alignment. Well, Gary's the master on regulation. Gary, what do you think?
I answered a similar question on a thread on Tracy McClimmon's sports massage training support group earlier. When we've got the likes of VTCT and ITEC and Active IQ and YMCA, the awarding organisations that have qualifications on the qualifications framework, when we have them, producing, in my opinion, courses which are not fit for purpose. The level 3 sports massage now only permits you to apply sports massage strokes on non-pathological tissue. Well, it's a bums on seats thing. We need to write to these awarding organisations and express our concern as individuals about the standard coming out. And I'm not disrespecting in any way anybody who's done one of these courses, because it's seen as an entry-level course. But I've had a chat with a good friend of mine who's from an awarding organisation. We spoke for an hour and a half on it. The level 3 was going to be downgraded to something along the lines of massage for the fitness professional, and level 4 was going to be an entry-level soft tissue qualification. Then COVID hit, and everybody's world has turned upside down. There's no getting away from that. So it's up to us now to sort of pick up that mantle again and start going to the awarding organisations and really, as if anybody's out there who's an educator, how long do you think we should be training people for? Because I was sent a screenshot of a course that was VTCT award, and it was 10 hours face-to-face training. The guided learning hours were 220, which is normal, but the face-to-face was only 10 hours, and I was horrified. But as long as we are subscribing to these, and a case in point here, if I go on Facebook and go to somewhere like Professional Skills Academy or Home Study College, I can guarantee 20 or 30 of my friends have liked the page, and yet they're sending out these ridiculous qualifications where you can do 5 qualifications for 100 quid. It's an information repository, and it's just just do some assignments, basically answer 10 questions per module. It takes you, 15, 20 hours, and then you've got a sports massage qualification that is insurable. And that's one of the questions I wanted to put to David this evening was, what is the insurance industry doing to make it difficult for these training providers to get insurance for these courses, because they're not fit for purpose. I'm not a big fan of one-day diplomas that are run by Gateway, and I'm sure they do some wonderful CPD courses, but they're not practitioner qualifications. So we need to take some responsibility individually. I'm doing what I can in the background, but if you are concerned about the standard of qualification that's coming out there, write to the awarding body and say, I'm not happy with this. What are you doing to improve standards, and you can write to the to Ofqual to voice your concerns. I'm already writing to and speaking to the people involved in regulation, the Professional Standards Authority, about standards, about it, with what I see in the voluntary accredited registers. And it all takes time. It's you send an email and it's 6 to 8 weeks before you get a response. So a conversation, a meaningful conversation, can take six to 9 months. Stevie Barr's about to do his level 3 and 4 with Active IQ, awarding organisation qualification. I'm actually quite pleased that some of the awarding organisations are combining this level 3 and 4, because, as I say, the level 3 really didn't prepare us to be occupationally competent. There's some great industry trainers out there with great reputations. Alex Hall from the Sports Massage Academy, he teaches a business module on his, which I think should be included. But if you look at the accredited register and the Complementary Natural Healthcare Council, there's a new sports massage / soft tissue therapy national occupational standard, which requires something along the lines of 560 hours of training, of which 353 have to be face-to-face. That's the published amount. And I don't know any course that meets that. So, what is the point of having a standard that can't be met? But what is the point of having a course that doesn't meet a standard? So there has to be some mid-ground somewhere that we need to get together and sort out. Louise has just put, I'm a graduate currently working 2 days a week at clinic giving sports massage therapy and sports rehab to clients, ongoing injuries, but started doing PT after all the time off in lockdown. Yeah, it's all about raising that profile again and rebuilding the business, but that's what we were saying, throughout the message that we gave throughout lockdowns, the various lockdowns, was engage with your client list. Whether that's putting things on your Facebook page, whether that's giving them a fortnightly telephone call or text message, let them know that you care about them, because that's what we do as a therapist. We care about them. We want them to achieve goals, and we use our various skill sets to facilitate that.
I was actually quite surprised. I've started doing gate-to-gate, face-to-face gait analysis again, and I was quite surprised at how emotional I felt inside. I didn't let it show, obviously, but at the first kind of face-to-face consultation I had again with somebody, actually I did the consultation online, but when it came to actually getting on the treadmill, then that was obviously face-to-face. And while I was doing it, and we did do some assessment, it was an ITB syndrome issue, so obviously I was testing and touching and feeling and stuff. And I was surprised, because I've been championing online consultation quite a lot. I wonder whether anybody else listening in here has had their kind of first actual face-to-face consultation and felt the same thing. But it just all came flooding back how nice it is to actually be in the presence of a human when you're caring for them and looking after them. And I could see it was nice, actually, because I really was thinking, a lot of this can be done online. You can get just as much online. You can do it online. But it felt so good to be with somebody, and actually I felt so much more powerful, not because what I was doing with my hands, but again, what I was kind of doing, I shouldn't say we're doing with my mouth, but with my ears, my mouth, and communicating with them. It was a great thing, which could only really be achieved face-to-face. So I'm pleased about that, because I was worried that it was all going to go kind of virtual. But yeah, interested to see some of you have also returned now, obviously, to face-to-face. Has it been a nice sensation, or has anybody had any negative experience of going back to face-to-face? Let us know in the comments.
There's a lot of members who I speak to, because if somebody sends an email during the day, I'll ring them up and chat to them about it rather than just sending an email back. So Marta, you're in the house tonight. I've left you a voicemail regarding your email. But a lot of the members have said that they were really anxious about it. And one of the coffee morning chats we had a couple of weeks ago, once we'd got the step 3 from the Prime Minister of the roadmap, we had the coffee morning chat, which lasted about an hour, and we spoke about people's anxieties about going back or just starting up, because let's not forget that during the pandemic there's people like Andy Glover, who's just said completed his level 3 and 4 in the past year, nowhere near the hours I mentioned. But these people have never actually plied their trade. So we spoke about vulnerability issues, we spoke about anxieties going back to work, but one of the overriding messages that came through was that they're going to book their regular clients in, the people who they perceive to be a friend, so they could get used to it. So it was like a soft opening, if you like. So a lot of members did that. I've spoke to a lot of members who were absolutely exhausted after the first day, of doing 4 clients, not just physical exhaustion, but mental exhaustion of retraining yourself. Like you said, a lot can be achieved online, but that, being in the same room, albeit 2 meters away, or, with PPE, being in the same room as somebody, there's a lot to be said for that. And that's one of the things that I miss, because I don't teach anymore, I don't work in clinical practice. So, it's a difficult time for everybody as we adapt. But, some of the social media we've been putting out is about, taking care of yourself, recognizing that during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, during the restrictions, we've all had time to reflect about what's important to us. So let's not go back to saying yes, yes, yes to every client. Let's learn to say no. So, well, actually, I physically can't fit you in. My appointment book is full. I don't mind having a chat over the phone and giving you a little bit of advice. But at the moment, I just haven't got any face-to-face appointments, because it is important that, you get out for your run, or you go for your walk, or whatever. Let's just have a look through the comments then.
Anne's left something interesting there. Anne's just mentioned that, preparing clients who have just, you're the first person they've seen outside of their bubble, so they're going to be quite weird and emotional, and that's going to drain you as well. But yeah, just for people listening to the podcast, Anne Cochrane has said, I've had a few emotional clients this week, as I was the first person they'd seen outside their bubbles. So yeah, it works both ways, doesn't it? People not quite sure what to expect.
One thing that we asked in the coffee morning, the last question before we closed the coffee morning chat was, how do people feel? Because we have been in lockdown, we have had bubbles, but how do people feel going back face to face in a room with a client when they've not been able to go and give their mum a hug or the dad a hug, not being able to speak to any family, apart from through a window in an outside space, not allowed because we're not in their bubble, and yet we are okay going back to face to face. So that I couldn't reconcile that in my own mind of how people were feeling. Marta's got my voice message. That's good. Half the people through the door were just for a well-being massage. They'd missed the contact. Some people do live alone. Yeah.
Becky suffered with verbal diarrhea being face-to-face with clients again. I've lost the art of actual conversation. Yeah, it's true. Suddenly got somebody giving it the large one in your ear hole, and you're like, oh, geez, how did I support this before? Yeah, I'm sure it will come back. Right? Question mark, question mark. Yeah, Becky, I'm sure it will come back. I think quite a few people, I know I've seen other health professionals are still combining. I mean, this might be the future, especially as now the common movement is away from, for a lot of therapists, doing manual therapy with your hands. We know now more the importance of the listening and the speaking, which can to be done online to a certain extent. So my service is now I'm doing as much as I can virtual, but if I know that I'm going to have to kind of examine them in face to face, or the sort of person who needs that contact, but I'm definitely combining the two. And I think a lot of other therapists are doing that now. We realize that you haven't got to get the person into your clinic all the time. And that's sensible, because like Gary said last week, we're not out of it yet. It's still, making sure that you're being careful and it's not all back to normal again. COVID-19 is still out there. So I wonder also whether how many people out there are thinking, actually, this virtual consultation for half of my clients and then coming in for the other half might work quite well. Monday, Tuesday, Zoom, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, or something face to face.
Talking about it not going away, even in my village, I live in a very small village, but we have a community Facebook group. But I've seen a couple of messages today from people who are saying, can anybody go to the shops for me? I'm having to isolate. I've tested positive. So it's still around. There's no way from it. I live 4 miles from a COVID test station, which is a local agricultural site. And every time you go up there, there's cars there. So it's still about, the rates are going down. Whether you are, a believer in it or not, whether you think it's a conspiracy or not, I know people who are ill. I know people who are suffering with long COVID, who were age group triathletes and now struggling to balance walking 50 meters. I think it's real. I don't think it's a government conspiracy, but that's my opinion, and I won't preach it to you anymore. Stevie Barr, can you put Stevie's comments up? So Stevie just mentioned about the level 3 and 4, and concern about what he's heard and what material he's got, compared to his own research. So, people like Greg Lehman, Mike Grice from Movement Therapy Education, Ben Cormack and Adam Meekins, by all means follow them. If you're offended by bad language, probably don't follow them. They like to swear a lot.
Especially Mike Grice. Oh, terrible.
Yeah, I meant Meekins and Cormack there. But I suppose Meekins is a love-hate one, isn't it? Really. I mean, I used to hate him. Then I've got a lot of respect for him. He made me challenge myself. He's the typical kind of guy who rolls a hand grenade into a room, then steps back and watches what's going on. I don't work like that, and I respect that he's chose to work like that. But he put some good stuff out there. His shoulder complex course is very well respected, and they are doing some really good stuff. The Massage Collective, that's Matt, Anna Maria, and Becky. They're putting some really good stuff up at the moment. So there's a lot of information out there, and what we're not doing is we're not dismissing sports massage and soft tissue therapy as a worthless passive intervention. What we're doing is we're just questioning the why we are doing things, and the what we are explaining might have changed in the last 7 to 10 years since some of those qualifications were designed. Carol Brown.
I'm interested with Steve. What's your concern? That is it so different? And when you put your own research in abbreviated commas, what do you mean? There's stuff you've been taught or stuff you've actually looked up yourself? And because you have got to pick the people you follow according to your own personality as well. Not everyone is going to, you've got to look at what these people write in different ways. Greg Lehman has been for 20 years ahead of his time. And he's so tired, and you can see in his eyes, he's just like on the edge the whole time. As soon as somebody says something, it's very tiring, because he was ahead of his time and saying things in the 90s that now people are putting on their blogs as if it's brand new. So he's very tired. Mike Grice, that's different. I've got a lot of time for Mike Grice, I think, particularly for people in this group, because he's just bridging that gap really well. He's doing a great job bridging the gap. Ben Cormack, again, does a lot of work with Adam Meekins. They're a good combination, actually, because Adam is or can be on Twitter and social media comes across as shouty. Then you meet him in real person and real humble and respectful, nice person. But Ben Cormack and those two kind of blend each other. But it's picking someone who suits your personality as well. Otherwise, you can get the wrong end of the stick. And the Massage Collective as well. I mean, I wouldn't put them in the same group as these guys, because they're, again, delivering a very healthy message. They're I think particularly Matt is having to dumb down his true beliefs quite a lot just to kind of not ruffle too many feathers. But so there shouldn't be anything too offensive with what the Massage Collective is saying. If you find it is really kind of against what you are looking at, then that's a road to explore. Because it would sound to me, if anybody finds what the Massage Collective are saying as revolutionary and kind of really, then I would definitely examine a little bit more what you're taking for granted and expecting as true. But yeah, don't let anything offend you or worry you, because at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. We're just talking about mechanisms of action here. You're not going to change anything you do, really. It's just what you tell your clients and what you believe is happening under your hands and how much time you spend doing things with your hands. That's all.
Also, as well, Matt, it's worth mentioning, all the people you mentioned are great educators there. As an educator yourself, do you find some frustration in the information you're being asked to deliver? Do you ever say, well, this is what I've been asked to teach you, but this is what's happening? Are you given that sort of free rein to make some anecdotal changes to the content?
I'm very lucky. I'm very much, the reason I like teaching is because I am left to myself. I have to make sure that people pass the exams, but that's pretty much as close as people look. Obviously, there's topic lists and schemes of work, and I think I've got just more. I don't try and fight it so much anymore. These big organizations like VTCT and iTech and stuff, I don't know how quickly we can expect them to change but I think the change will come from the teachers actually twisting a little bit. If all the teachers start being proud of what they deliver and understand that, because it probably happens in all professions, chiropractors, osteopaths, physios, all of them have to tweak a little bit the course details, just to be proud of that. They know they're putting something a bit evidence informed. So I don't mind it. I like it. I think the challenge is bringing the students up to scratch in terms of, look, when we look at this critically, it's a little bit different than what the examining board is saying, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You're going to see that throughout your life. And a lot of what we're talking about now will be changed in 2 or 3 years' time. So it can be quite a handy lesson in life to let students know that just what it says in the exam might not be what's going to happen when you're in the room. So I don't know.
I had a conversation with Mike Grice going back, 6 months, a year ago. I've sort of lost concept of time recently. And we were talking about the National Occupational Competency Standards relating to electrotherapy. And I know Mike came on and we spoke about this briefly. And I did list them on the Shockwave one with Uwe and Mike. But he felt uncomfortable teaching some of the occupational competencies which were outdated. So, my suggestion and what we came up between us was that, sometimes if there is something that's outdated, we can use that as a really good learning experience, an opportunity for our students by explaining how the evidence has moved on since. So we might be talking about infrared heat lamps, but we can then explain, well, since this, occupational competency was incepted in 2009, for example, there's been a lot more research available. We now know that it's not doing what we thought it was doing, and the efficacy of its use is questionable, and there's not so much supporting evidence for it. So we don't have to dismiss everything. We can just say, well, this is what it was. And Walt Fritz was an advocate of this as well. We're talking about, what he used to teach and saying, well, that is what I believed at the time. But now, as the evidence has unfolded and there's more and more research, what we actually believe now is somewhat different to what we believed that back then. And as an educator, if you're big enough to stand in front of the class and say, well, this was my belief, but I've changed my belief because of this evidence, then I think that, you're a good educator. We should all be able to stand up and say, I'm wrong from time to time. Brian Huxley just mentioned rice is a great example. I don't know whether he's talking about his tea or, it's the acronym, isn't it? Yeah, it's the rest, compress and elevate. Yeah. And there's so many acronyms that have been out since rice.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's healthy. It's healthy that we learn that not everything we're taught and read is totally applicable. There's nothing wrong with that. It'll always be like that because things happen. Research takes a long time to get through to the clinic doors. We've said a lot of times. Stevie Barr just following up his concern. I guess I'm a total sponge. There is this danger. We've all done that. Most sports therapists, well, I did it. I did sports therapy, and I was convinced I needed to be a physiotherapist. And then I realized that wasn't it. I needed to be an osteopath, and then it was a podiatrist. And sometimes it takes a long time before you realize I don't need to keep being something else. I'm just going to fine tune what I've got already. And I think it's particularly difficult with sports therapists because there is such variety out there, and there is this idea that you've got to learn this new manual technique. Once you realize that it's not all in your hands, it's more about the way you interact with people, then you really can start fine tuning it. Whilst you think it's all about what can I do with my hands, and there's always another course to learn or another type of instrument to use or something. So like Mike Stewart said in the No Pain episode we did, become a better teacher, become a better listener, educator, communicator. That's how really you help people. So yeah, watch out for being sponges. I used to think it was cool saying I'm an eternal student. Oh, it was lovely putting it at the end of emails, oh, we are eternal students. But I think that can be really dangerous.
If we go back to one of the earlier sessions that we had, we spoke about passive interventions, and we asked members to come up with a percentage that they perceived that their passive interventions made a difference, whether that be dry needling, cupping, soft tissue, whatever intervention is your one of choice, and how much was you as a therapist, everything you've learned in life to that point, how much was you and how much was the intervention that made that client feel better when they went out? and it averaged out about 25% was the intervention, and 75% was the way that therapists spoke to them, listened to them, educated them, shared knowledge with them. And I know that's going to be, a more experienced therapist who might come to this career as a second or third career even. They might have some transferable skills which put the client at ease. They might come from a fitness industry background and have an extensive knowledge of strength and conditioning or exercise prescription. So they might use their thumbs as an adjunct to their main sort of modality. So yeah, there was always this saying about it's another tool for the toolbox, but how many tools do we already have in that toolbox that are not what we've learned on a course, which are things that we've picked up in life, the University of Life.
University of Life.
Anne Cochran says, if somebody wants to start training now as a sports massage therapist, which courses and qualifications would you advise them to do? She went for an active IQ level 3 many years ago, which was face-to-face. Feel uncertain where she should go next. So Anne, it depends when you did your level 3 with active IQ, because if it was before 2009, then that covered much of what's covered in the level 4 now and some of what's in the level 5. If it was between 2009 and 2014, it may have had a remedial aspect to it, the soft tissue therapy, or it may not have had. So I think we need to have a conversation between you and I, so we can schedule a chat, so I can let you know. But to a certain extent, it's a bit of a box ticking exercise at the moment, and I don't like saying that, but to get into the industry, if you want to train as a sports massage therapist, then what I would seriously do is ask around for personal recommendations from a local college or a local training provider, because it's not enough to say that active IQ or VTCT is a recognised qualification, because the delivery will change. There'll be a massive variance in the delivery and teaching style. The qualification will be exactly the same at the end, but let's just take a further education college with 38 academic weeks in the year, 3 hours practical, 3 hours theory, 3 times 4 is 120, so it's 240 hours of training there. And yet the example I used before was 10 hours of face-to-face in that 220 guided learning hours. So ask for recommendations. We do accredit certain courses, but again, if I had my way and only accredited courses that met a standard, then we wouldn't accredit any courses. So what we have to do, there has to be box ticking exercise and a qualification that's on the awarding bodies, on the qualifications framework is an acceptable qualification. Level 4, as I've said to a lot of people recently, is a box ticking exercise. A lot of level 3 therapists were excluded from work when we were in various tiers or various lockdown stages, because they didn't have a remedial aspect to their remit, to their qualification, whereas level 4, they were permitted to work. So to a certain extent, you've got to tick that box and get your level 4. But I will fight your case if your level 3 is historic and it meets the standard. So this is why I speak to every member who said I've got level 3, and it might be a level 3 diploma from the International Institute of Sports Therapy, going back to the 90s or the early 2000s. So speak to me about your particular qualification. I've got fairly good comprehensive knowledge of what they equal in today's money, so to speak.
When does a sports massage therapist turn into a sports therapist? When does the massage bit come out of it? Because on level 4, for example, I teach level 3 and level 4. And level 3, I don't mind level 3 the way I teach it, because it's for people to get used to massage, which I think is really important. I learned massage in a wigwam in the middle of some park somewhere in Brighton, and it was really very hippie, and it was great. And I believe that a lot of the joy I have for massage and give to people is because I am imagining the sea and I'm using that rhythm. And I remember the teacher saying, close your eyes and just enjoy it yourself, and then that'll transmit to them. And it was just it set you up with that rhythm and that contact and that empathy, both verbal and also just in your movements and keeping contact. And that's what I get my students to practice on level 3, and also just identifying, obviously, tissue which they're not allowed to work on if it is an injury, as opposed to what VTCT call dysfunctional. But when I get to level 4, then I make it quite clear, right, okay, it's still called sports massage therapy, but I'm going to teach you now a lot which isn't massage. It's still called sports massage therapy, but I wonder whether that title limits it. If it's called sports massage therapy, it's kind of suggesting that everything you do revolves around massage, whereas at least on my level 4, it's not in the syllabus, but I'm teaching them loading. I'm teaching them the importance of giving them strengthening exercise instead of stretching, the importance of understanding when not to stretch, and kind of red flags to that. So do you think the term sports massage therapy is limiting in itself?
I do. And if you notice, if you have a look at Melcash and ISRM and the SMA, they are now associations of soft tissue therapists, because originally sports remedial massage, there was no therapy descriptor for remedial massage. So it was a bit of a defunct title. So they've moved over to soft tissue therapy. And I think, yes, the level 3 sports massage, but it shouldn't be sports massage therapy, because in real terms, there isn't a therapeutic, there isn't a reason for doing it, because we're not working on pathological tissue. So I'm going to come back to that comment, Brian, in a second. So soft tissue therapy, level 4 and level 5, advanced soft tissue therapy. Now, if you look, and the only thing that we've got to base this on is the National Occupational Competency Standards, which are Sector Skills Council owned. So Skills for Health own the sports therapy ones, and there is a sports massage one which has been there was no consultation on the newer version that's held by the CNHC at the moment, and that was done by one of the directors of the SMA, I believe, as I say, without consultation to the wider industry. But there's no minimum standard for sports therapy in education. So you don't have to be a degree, or you don't have to have a degree or go to university. But ethically, we must meet the 14 occupational competencies of sports therapy to call ourselves a sports therapist. Now, this is one of the questions that I wanted to bring up with David earlier, was that, if a module on a course, doesn't have an assessment of competency, how can we be insured for that? So you're teaching, I'll use your example of teaching on your level 4 course about strength and conditioning. Do you in any way assess your student cohort as being occupationally competent to prescribe that type of activity? And if you do, what certificate do they get? On the back of the VTCT level 4 certificate, does it say strength and conditioning? Does it say, does it have a module list that they've been, assessed as being occupationally competent? And if it does, then in my opinion, it should be insurable. But if it's a module that you just complete, then should it be insurable? I'll just put the question out there. Brian Huxley said that level 4 should be sports therapy. Well, I kind of agree, Brian, and I kind of disagree, because as I've just mentioned, if the level 4 met all of the occupational competencies, then it should be sports therapy. But if it doesn't, then it shouldn't. And this is where numerical things came in, the awarding bodies. There was a level 3 that was perfectly fit for purpose, but the awarding bodies wanted to sell another course. So instead of developing the level 3 and adding something to it, they watered down the level 3 and delivered the existing level 3 as a level 4 course. Over time, there have been changes made to that level 4. But primarily private training providers use numerical levels as a marketing tool. So you might see a level 6 diploma, open brackets, degree equivalent. Well, it's not a degree equivalent because it's not done in the university. It's not done to the same standards. It doesn't have the same amount of hours, the reflective, critical analysis, etc. It might just be a marketing tool. So really check out, when you're signing up for these.
I think you're going to have to. It's like, who said, you check out the teacher as well, because I don't know what other teachers are like, so I can only comment on myself, but I'm 20-30% of what I deliver on level 4 isn't in the syllabus and is not needed. I just give it because I want to know that when my students go into clinic, they're not going to have a total shock and surprise and realize that none of their people are getting better because all they're doing is, I mean, level 4 is simply level 3 plus METs, cross friction, myofascial release. What else was it? Active release or something. It's just all manual therapy. It's 5 different manual therapy things, and that's it. No mention of strength and conditioning at all on it, at all. So,
but if you look at the way that qualifications should be designed, if we look at the course attributes for course qualifications, level 3, so personal trainers, sports massage, you apply a skill. So it's an application. So your assessment will be you applying those skills that you've learned as a personal trainer, i.e. taking somebody through a 60-minute session, a warm-up, a main session and a cool down, or being assessed giving a sports massage. Now, the only thing that should be different for a level 4 is there should be analytical behavior. So it should be your subjective, your objectives. I don't think that soft tissue therapy techniques should be taught anything other than level 3 because you're applying them. Yes, you can have a depth of understanding of why you're doing it, what the likely outcomes will be, but at level 5, it's synthesis. It's how do you put together a training program, a periodization. It's not I'm going to teach you another soft tissue technique or electrotherapy and we'll call it level 5. So the way that we design qualifications has really changed over the past decade or decade and a half, so that it's numerically superior instead of course attribute superior. So there's no hierarchy of the numerals at the moment.
So we've gone to the comments here. I'm going to read out Helen Stone's because she took a long time to type it. Helen Stone says, I came originally from radiography, having trained in the 80s. The teaching was the same, varied, open to discussion. Things changed over the years, leaving it up to us to move with the times. This profession is lucky to have so much opinion and variety, but in turn leads to a lot of mind madness. For me anyway, I find it's an art not to get bogged down and stick to the end product, doing the best for the patient. Having competency guidelines would certainly help. Yeah. It is interesting calling it an art because that does make you realize it's not black and white anyway. And, you know, you need to react to the person in front of you. It's true. Oh, yeah, there's special tests in level 4. I have to go through all of them. But again, it's just giving it the names. And they're just, it's like students look at me and go, seriously, you want to learn all these names? I'm like, yeah, but you're never going to use them again. If you want to see how do a special test on someone's shoulder, just say, what makes it hurt? You haven't got to do the name of this, the name of this, the name of this, the name of this. Just put it into different positions or, you know, but people are trying to get rid of these names. But yeah, the level 4 syllabus is something I don't even show my students because it's just scary when you look at the list of different special tests.
But, you know, you take the shoulder tests, for example. We used to teach them to, a methodology. But really, if you've done a simple abduction, 30 degrees abduction, and the client experiences pain, there's no point in doing anything else because all you're going to do is reinforce that they're in pain, just doing a different movement. So how special are special tests? And like you said, Matt, it's about the communication. I never say what makes it hurt. I always used to say, what can you do before the onset of discomfort? I try and move away from the word pain because it catastrophizes things, but what can you do before you get any discomfort? Let's focus on that. Let's focus on changing the parameters of that movement, but still within the the sort of brackets of comfort. And that might be some passive interventions we mentioned. That might be some passive movements, and it might be some compound movements. For example, is not using that joint to promote the movement by using another joint, and the bad joint in effect becomes a secondary movement. It is an art. It is. I once assessed a student and they were going 1, 2, 3. I said, "Whoa, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm going to do 16 of these before I move on to the next." What do you mean a routine? It should be intuitive, as we're treating people.
I've just find Louise Aker that special tests. I haven't done these in ages, she says. They're done intuitively. If someone's got an ankle, you automatically do these tests and some of them are useful to know. Obviously, it's not all of them. Let's not chuck them all out. Like if you're doing a draw test or something to test laxity. But then again, the other thing I find myself telling students is all these special tests, but then the actual exercise you give the person at the end is going to involve, if it's an ankle, standing on one leg and trying to balance, and then moving their upper body around and gradually progressing it so they get stronger and better and more capable and confident in doing it. So a lot of this diagnosing is just invented by the industry as well, and it's part of the problem. If we just get rid of the diagnosis to a certain extent, once we've ruled out dangerous stuff, then we just got to ease the person back into being able to use it again. It's tricky.
Tina EB. Hi, Tina. How you doing? Tina's local to me.
There we are. Tina EB. One day and tutor and assess it the next.
Go up one. Go up
Oh,
one.
right. Sorry, I've started halfway through there. There we go. So Tina EB says, do some of the industry award problems stem from tutors being able to teach what they are qualified in with or without field-based experience, i.e. pass the course?
I'll have a go at answering that if I may. Then. So if you look at a university setting, okay, normally you would go and do an undergraduate qualification, and then if you, as the lads were inferring last week, is there was no employment route for them to go after their undergraduate studies. They got the degree, so they went on to the master's program. Now, what tends to happen is those master's programs, you will start teaching on the undergraduate program. So you might not have any field experience or clinical relevance or clinical competency. So in that setting, then I think there is a likelihood that you are being taught by somebody who might not have been working in the industry. Now, in the soft tissue industry, we'll call it that, the awarding organisations used to have some criteria which said that the tutor had to be qualified to a level 4 if they wanted to teach a level 3, or level 5 if they wanted to teach a level 4, and have 2 years clinical experience working at that level before they could teach. Now, I'm not sure if that's still the case, because I haven't really looked at the tutor qualifications and things. But I know for a fact there are tutors out there who have never treated anybody. They've never worked in the industry, and yet they are teaching. And I can't police that. That's the awarding organisations who should be policing that. And if we accredit a course, Tom Bell, who's our accreditations officer, will go through with a fine-tooth comb the tutor and the assessor CV. He will look at the schemes of work. He will look at the syllabus. He will look at the policies and procedures for assessment and verification, so that we know and we've got confidence that those courses meet a standard. We might not think that standard is high enough, but at the moment, that's the standard that we've got.
That's a good question, Tina. Yeah, very good question.
Tina's come back then. I tutor and assess fitness industry qualifications. As soon as I passed sports therapy within a week, I was asked if I could cover an industry award course. Politely declined. I worked in further education, and I was teaching on a sports course, and I was asked to go to an office, the school's office, and asked if I would mind teaching the legal aspect of a uniformed services course. And I said, well, I don't know anything about it. Well, you've been in the army, so I'll be okay, you'll be able to do it. And I politely declined as well, because I didn't think that I had the skill or the knowledge to do that. So yes, unfortunately, it does exist.
So, people out there, we've got 5 minutes left. Unfortunately, it hasn't been possible to connect with David from Balens Insurance tonight. We'll reschedule it. We've got a few gaps, so it will happen. Apologies that it hasn't happened tonight. But it's been a nice chance to have a little chat with people who have come in here. If you listen to the podcast and you thought, I would have liked to have been in that group there to put some questions for us and give some feedback, then all you got to do is join us on Tuesdays. It's every Tuesday, 8 o'clock. In the Sports Therapy Association Facebook page, or you can watch it on YouTube as well. You can watch it live and comment from YouTube. So you've got both of those options. But for now, I think Brian has just put a little comment on there. So true, Gaz. I know some beauty therapy tutors who have no experience whatsoever in SMT and are teaching from a book. I think it works both ways, though, because there's also clinicians who are still being clinicians, but they're still doing what they've done for the last 10 years, and they're just really believing what they're doing, and they haven't evolved. So you can get people who are teaching and still teaching at the same time and still treating at the same time. I think it's communication more than anything. I think it's communicating with people, and that goes for everybody, just communicating with people who aren't necessarily always on the same page as you. And one of the problems with regulation, I think, and having one book which we all have to follow from, is you don't evolve like that. You know, we need to have people doing slightly different things and believing slightly different things and practicing different things, because that's how the anecdotal evidence and the clinical evidence which you see in clinic turns around and becomes something interesting to study. So we do need to be all on a slightly different corner of the page, if you like. So that's what I think one of the dangers of us all thinking we just need everyone to be doing the same guidelines, because then no one would experiment. But what we do need all together is just all being happy to criticize what we do and to see how we could be wrong. And anything you do believe and read, think, how could that be wrong? Because that's what science does. How can we disprove this? That's the way to look at it, rather than thinking, oh, I love this, I enjoy this. Let's look at things that support it. Let's find some things online which agree with me and people who do it as well. Challenge everything, and that will make you a good clinician, I think. There you go, Gary. You were worried about us rattling on. Craig there. Look at that. Put it on screen. Yeah. It's actually been great listening to you guys without a guest. Thanks, Craig. It's made us feel better.
Two things, Matt, if I may, just to finish off. People may suggest, or it may have been suggested in the past, that I bang on about standards quite a lot. Okay, well, I do, because I think it's important. Now, if we wanted to change the sports therapy standards, we would have to go to the Sector Skills Council and pay them £20,000 for the privilege of changing the standards. So what we've been doing in the background is we've been negotiating with the Sector Skills Council and basically telling them that what they own is not fit for purpose. But we were willing to help them by providing some up-to-date evidence-informed occupational competencies. So we are producing a form at the moment which is going to go out to all members, where they can fill it in and say what they believe are the competencies required to be a successful sports therapist or sports massage therapist, soft tissue therapist. And then we're going to put those forward and hopefully get those sort of co-opted without paying the enormous fee. So that's one thing. Secondly, when you were talking away there, Matt, about challenging behaviour and things, I can remember I was teaching with Brian one weekend, and my plumber, who was a very good footballer, played semi-pro. He had an IT band issue, and when we were taught, knuckles down the IT band, get your elbow in there, and he sent me a YouTube video of somebody with a sink plunger on the IT band, and they plunged it, and they were doing some movements, some sort of active movements, whilst they were decompressing these tissues instead of compressing them. And so what we did is we actually went out at lunchtime and bought some plungers and said to the people, right, play around with these. Does it make a difference? Does it feel different if you're compressing it or decompressing it? And so that just came as a simple thing from a plumber, but it got us then to start thinking. And we're going back to the days when we were taught that IT band problems, get your knuckles down there, really sort of work it out. So yeah, don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to evolve, because unless we try things, there's no new research. We need to have some fresh ideas. Fiona, Fiona Notman wished she'd joined us earlier. Interesting topic.
Oh, that wasn't me. I didn't chuck him out. Gary, where have you gone? Who hit the eject Gary button? Okay, so if you listen to the podcast, Gary's just suddenly left the screen. I'm sure he'll be back. He must have kicked something with his size 15 feet. Anyway, let's just check. People in the Facebook here, you can still hear me okay? Oh, Gary's back. I did. It wasn't me.
No, I don't know what I did there. I think I was that enraged. I must have clicked my mouse. and switch my camera off. Yeah. Fiona, if you want to have a chat on your opinions, more than happy to schedule a call with you. It has actually been quite good, hasn't it, just to have a bit of a waffle on, really. So it seems to have gone down fairly well. I'm going to speak with Brian about how he knows so much about beauty therapy. He must have some weekly treatments, and he's getting on a bit now. He might have had some work done.
Right then. Okay, well, we'll call it a night there. Thanks, people, for joining us. I mean, it's only been an interesting chat because we've had kind of 35 odd people in here inspiring us and chatting to us like you always do. So thanks again for people who join us live. If you listen to the recording, then maybe think about, it hasn't got to be every Tuesday if you don't want to, but come in, make yourself a cup of tea and come and join us for an hour or
Matt,
so.
There's a question on the plumbing tools. It was neat. Lizzie's put, we need to know whether the compressing or decompressing proved more effective with plumbing tools.
Oh, well, we had it. I had one in my clinic.
It was purely anecdotal. Okay, there was no research done other than opinion, and people seem to like the decompressive nature of it. But then if you go forward and we talk about kinesiology tape having that decompressing effect. So yes, I think decompression rather than getting the knuckles into the IT band.
I remember in that era walking into the clinic, remember there's like 10 therapists and I'd got a sink plunger with me and put it into my room. And they said, what are you doing with that? I said, well, and I explained the logic behind it because we'd learned that ITB syndrome was, in theory, you could be making things worse by pushing down onto the fatty pad and stuff. So let's try lifting it away. But then we learned that the ITB often is connected to the femur anyway, and you can't pull it away in half the cases anyway. So, but yeah, it's a good example of experimenting and thinking outside the box. Anyway, that's it, people. Thank you so much. For next Tuesday, it should be Mark Laslett. I do encourage you to come along for that. I've grabbed him from a couple of other shows I've listened to. A really nice way of updating your beliefs around sacroiliac joint pain, which is a big topic. A lot of people suffering from that, and they may be suffering unnecessarily because of what they've been told. Is a good example where we need to brush up on the language we use. So that'll be next week. I didn't eject Gary. Don't start spreading stuff like that, Alistair. Right, we're off. Thanks, Gary. We'll see you soon, everybody else.
Yeah, cheers, everyone. Bye.
Take care.